I was filling out the application for the Wendy's High School Heisman Award. I didn't really know that much would come.
It's teamwork. You communicate with...
What that involves is making sure I communicate and coordinate with each of the guidance departments.
We're building a ramp for someone who really
Don't
can't
give up just because it's hard, because I had a lot of times where I thought I wasn't going to make it.
Hi, welcome to Hometown Heroes. I'm your host, Andy Kitzrow. Today we have Simone Richardson joining us. Welcome, Simone.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a while since we've last seen each other. So catch me up. What has been going on? What are you up to these days?
So I currently am a graduate student at Clemson University in South Carolina. And I love being in South Carolina, but I actually just moved back to Maryland. And so, of course, born and raised in Maryland, and just was in Clemson for a short while. But I'm happy to be back because I think Maryland is home for me in a lot of ways. And so moving back here, thankfully, I have awesome faculty and an awesome supervisor that have worked with me so that I can be virtual and kind of finish out all of my requirements that way so that I can be here. Also, I just got a full-time job offer, my first full-time job offer, which is really exciting because I've never worked full time. I've always been a student and an employee through being a student. So it's super exciting now to kind of start my professional journey that way. And yeah, there's so much, but I don't know if you want to go in a specific direction.
First, congratulations on being offered that job position. Let's dive a little bit into Clemson first, but let's take it a step back before you got into graduate school at Clemson. Let us know your undergraduate experience that took you into Clemson and what have you been studying along the way?
Absolutely. So I went to Towson University. That's where I got my undergrad degree from. And I have a bachelor's degree in family science. And so initially, when I got to Towson, I wanted to go to law school. So family science, and then thinking that I wanted to be a family lawyer, and then I was going to pursue law. But I knew in life that I wanted to be an advocate in some degree, right? And so kind of naively, and I guess just not knowing much about ways you could be an advocate, I didn't discover that I could be a student advocate until I got to Towson. And it was through my involvement in different departments there that I realized that being a student advocate was a thing. And so I was like, I could work in student affairs and actually make this a career and love what I'm doing. And so I decided to pursue a master's degree at Clemson. The process of where am I going to go to grad school? What does this even look like? It was challenging, but interesting. And of course I was up to the task, but I just knew around that time, it was like first semester of my senior year, I was like, I just want to hit the fast forward button. Like if you've ever seen the movie, well, I don't even know the movie. It's like Click or The Remote or something with Adam Sandler, right? I was just like, give me the fast forward because that's just where I want to be. I don't want the stress of not knowing my next step. So I just need to figure that out. So with some really awesome mentors and some people who were helping me along the way, I decided that in pursuing a graduate education, I need to look at schools from a critical lens, which isn't something I was doing before. I was like, I'll go anywhere. If a school wants me, I want them. So let's go. But now kind of narrowing down my list, I think I started with like 25 schools on my list. And my mentor was like, oh no, ma'am, we're not going to be sending 25 applications unless that's what you want to do. But like, that doesn't need to happen. And so we talked a little bit about it, and I was able to kind of weed my list down to about 3 schools, and I was really excited for those 3 schools specifically. And so I actually started the year 2020 studying abroad. And that was a super exciting experience. I spent 4 weeks in London, which was super fun. But of course, whenever I felt motivated to do work outside of our curriculum for study abroad, we didn't have internet in our flat. And so I was like, I don't even know, like, of course, right? Like here I am motivated to do these grad school applications, ready to go, excited for my new step, and I don't have internet. So thankfully in our kind of itinerary for our trip, we had a couple of free days built in. So a couple of my girlfriends and I took a day trip to Paris. And so I actually submitted my application to Clemson on the train from London to Paris, which is like my fun fact I tell people often. But actually, when I landed back in the United States, I had found out my grandma passed away. And so that was really, I don't even know a feeling. I haven't talked to many people about this, but I don't know what feeling I was feeling, but I just knew, where do grad school applications kind of fit in all of that? I ended up missing the first like 3.5 weeks of my last semester of college. And so even seeing the support as people had rallied around me, a lot of student affairs workers during that time, that kind of reassured me, like, this is the field I want to go into. I want to be that support for any student who might be faced with unexpected trials or tribulations that they might have. And so Clemson is the only application that I did from start to finish. And so all of my eggs in a basket to a T, right? And so, yes, really crossing my fingers and hoping that it worked out. And so the way Clemson structures their graduate program is that you can be accepted or admitted into the program, but you have to secure a graduate assistantship to, I guess, like have a spot in the cohort. And so I got accepted to Clemson, which was super exciting, but I was like, this is only half of it. I have to go now. So right after, it was maybe a week after I had touched back down into the United States, I had to get back on a plane and then go to Clemson to interview for a position. And so thankfully everything worked out. I was able to secure a position, and then Clemson is where I ended up. But 2020 was a crazy year, and then COVID happened, right? So it was just like
that little thing.
So 2020 was crazy for me. So I like to joke with people that I got all my travel done in that first like 2.5 months before the world shut down. I think I had been on 13 planes and 2 boats. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to see another plane. I don't want to see another airport. And then I didn't get to because then the world shut down. So I jinxed myself in that way too. But getting to kind of finish out my undergrad degree, I didn't get to walk because everything was postponed, but it didn't even matter to me because I was super excited to continue my journey, or start my journey at Clemson. And so I definitely was like, had needed some adjustment in that period. And so I'm, like I said before, I'm happy to be back in Maryland now. I feel like I have so much more at my disposal than I did when I was there. But I love both places for very different reasons, but just happy to be back.
You did have a pretty busy couple of months there in 2020. That's pretty exciting. What I wanted to go over, it's interesting because you, with what you're passionate about within student affairs, student supports, and then you actually being a student who dealt with the transition of graduating during COVID and then trying to take that next step during COVID, it definitely hit the people who had those major changes in their lives, whether it's graduating from high school, graduating from college, or trying to transition into the workforce. It really hit everybody pretty hard. Major milestones, major opportunities kind of all just were either postponed or deferred or just didn't happen as a result. So how does understanding being a student in that, but then also being interested in helping students overcome that potentially in the future, I think it's a unique perspective as being somebody who dealt with it to then understand what students are going through. So if you can touch a little bit more on maybe the personal touch of going through COVID and how that may help you in your next steps, helping with students or kind of some of those goals, that'd be great.
It was really interesting to experience it myself, and then just a couple short months later have to be able to support students through it. So in the assistantship that I had, I actually was working with first year, first semester students. And so that was exciting. That's the student population that I love, right? Students who are really just trying to get their bearings and someone who's there to support them along the way. That's who I want to be, right? So talking to them about their experience and then kind of hearing, like thinking that my experience was bad, I just didn't get to walk at graduation. They didn't get prom. They didn't get all the fun stuff that kind of comes with being a senior trips that a lot of them had booked or were looking forward to. And then starting college, right, in this age of COVID. So some people were on campus, some people were virtual. Some people's roommates still lived in Michigan, and they were just like, I don't have the college experience I was expecting. Like, should I just go back home, or should I just take this year off? And kind of supporting them through that. And it was so interesting because for me, talking with a student about, trying to make the most of their journey, there's just such a interesting juxtaposition, because I'm also here trying to make the most of my journey, right? I was so excited to come to Clemson because so many people had said that the experience was going to be unforgettable. And like you said before, Death Valley and just all of the things that are Clemson football, right? And I'm not huge into football, but like I understand it enough, spending all the years that I did, cheering for my high school football team and all the things. So I was excited, but never got to go to a game my first year. Even though they were still having games, I was like, I just feel weird just going to a game with all of those people. But like, COVID is a scary thing, right? And so I hadn't actually contracted COVID at all. I was just like nervous of the idea of it and hearing other people's experience with it. So I feel like I was living in kind of in a timid way in myself, and felt a little bit like a hypocrite telling students like, well, be okay, like going and knocking on your neighbor's door. And I'm like, would I go and knock on my neighbor's door, right? So I was trying to think through like practical ways to advise students of how to make the most of their experience without feeling hypocritical, right? And thinking that like, Simone, you would not even do that yourself. You are trying to stay away from COVID and all the things that are COVID. And so definitely kind of having a reckoning with myself about like, how can I talk through these students about making the most of their experience? How can I talk to them about supporting them? Even in the classroom, a lot of students were struggling, never having to have virtual learning be a thing for them. And then getting to college and all of it being virtual, right? Because really our first semester was completely virtual. And I know that for a lot of students, not only was it not their desire, but the learning curve was big. Online classes are no joke, right? The self-discipline that you have to have going from a high school student who was really in school for 8 hours a day, physically, to then occasionally popping on your Zoom for an hour or two a day, such a different ballpark altogether. And so really talking with a lot of students about trying to develop good study habits, or even good going to class habits, right? Making sure that they're setting alarms and doing all of the things, just to be able to find success in their first semester. And so I actually also got to teach a class. I was a seminar instructor for the same students that I was mentoring. Well, not mentoring, because I guess it was my job, but mentoring and also advising just structurally too, because it was my assistantship. But getting to work with them in the classroom too was something that was really exciting. And so often before we started class, I would do a vibes check with my students, just because it always felt weird to just kind of jump into curriculum. And so, like, how is everybody feeling? How's your week going? Like, are there any big things that are going on that I should know about? All of those things we used to do at the beginning of every class. And so talking with my students, at least in the beginning, to break down the barrier, to actually hear about their experience and not just kind of thinking that they're just little robots on the screen ready to talk to me about time management and like other things that other like big things that of course they need to learn, but we can touch on those things kind of in our big discussion as we're just going through them talking about their experience as a student kind of living and breathe, like their only experience of college so far is what the COVID experience was. And so thankfully now we have really leaned out of a lot of the kind of strict protocols that were. Clemson is very big in the in-person experience. Like Clemson knows how to sell students on the Clemson experience because it's the Clemson experience, right? And so any way that they could work the mandates to be able to give students that Clemson experience, they really tried hard to do. And so that's something that I appreciated because it didn't last long for our students. Into second semester, a lot of things were open again, and a lot of things had returned to not normal, but like, of course, like more free and more comfortable for a lot of people. So it definitely, like I said, was short-lived for them, which is nice. I know a lot of other schools had like mandates a lot longer. And of course we still had them, but they were just a lot more manageable for sure for students.
As you talk about like reflecting on this experience, so you got a whole bunch of students in the last couple of years who all they have known is this virtual, almost scary hybrid world. So if college already wasn't scary enough or challenging enough,
right?
What did you learn about yourself during this process? But then what do you think they are learning about themselves? Because you are similar in age and even, schooling,
right,
that it's going to help you help them, I guess, in a long time.
One of the things that I learned about myself, truthfully, is to take a step back, honestly. And I think that that is something that I'm hoping that a lot of people were able to reflect and find, right? The idea of, well, I guess I should frame it this way. COVID taught me that we don't always have to be on go. And that's something that I was to a T, always finding an additional task to do, or always trying to kind of insert myself to be able to help in any way that I can, which is something that is kind of natural to me, but at the same time, learning like Simone, back up, take a step, right? Like, and what better way to learn that than when like I couldn't do anything or couldn't go anywhere or it was out of my control. But I think that out of that, I really learned that it's all right to need a day, or it's all right to kind of put yourself first in a moment where you maybe feel overwhelmed or overworked or just overstimulated, right? Because knowing that like not much was happening on the outside world, but so much is happening on your phone or on your TV, or just you're just like sitting, but just seeing stuff. And that is just not the best feeling. So unplugging sometimes, right? Taking a moment to yourself or finding things that you really enjoy is something that now I don't take for granted. And being grateful to have, yes, of course, I'm completely remote now because I live in Maryland and go to school in South Carolina. But still, even when I was in South Carolina, right, I liked to go to the office because when I first moved, we were completely virtual. And so I had just moved into my apartment too, and I had to move in sight unseen because I was apartment shopping in Maryland. And so when I got there, it was so much smaller than I had anticipated. And my room didn't have space for a desk. And so my apartment was also really small. So my roommate, he started his day a lot earlier than I did. So he was downstairs, but our downstairs was so small that only one person could be downstairs if you're on meetings or in class or doing whatever. And so everything was from my room, and not even from my room, from my bed. Like I had to take meetings from my bed. I had like, it was just, and by the time it was like time for bed, I was up. I like had the worst set of insomnia that I had never known insomnia before I moved to South Carolina. So experiencing that was like terrible. And I was like, okay, I have to switch it up because I need to have some level of separation, some type of division. And the inside of the Clemson library, they knew me because I was like, I'm gonna find a pod or a quiet space that I can take my meetings from and do my classwork from, because it's just not healthy for me to do it from my room. But I almost felt like I had no other outlet, because I also had just moved and didn't really know the area or didn't really know the resources. And so also like pushing my students to do that too, right? So, like I liked that I could resonate with my students to say, I'm a first year student technically too. Like I'm a grad student, but I'm kind of like a freshman. So I'm trying to learn all of these things and of course trying to support you all. But the library has great resources and there's study pods in there. And so I would always try to flip it or spin it so that my students could at least find the gems that I was finding throughout Clemson that were helping me along my journey. Because being locked in your room, you can feel super siloed in there. And so that's something that I kind of had to pull myself out of. And so definitely that like double side of things, like I loved the fact that like I could slow down in life, and that's something that I'm going to implement forever. But when things are too slow, you're going to have to learn to ramp them back up and pick them up in the ways that you can. So the library is open. It's not 24-hour access anymore, but it's still open and we can use it, right? So do whatever you have to do. If you have to register 24 hours in advance or whatever the case is, set yourself up for success to make sure that you're doing that so that you can, have some hours outside of your room or a space to kind of have that separation between like home and school or work or other life that's going on too. So just in supporting students, trying to like connect them with resources, but also learning the resources too as I'm trying to connect them. So very interesting, Pat.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we are cut from the same cloth. So I want to drill down on something we started off the conversation with on you being abroad. What's your experience on those travels and abroad that you learned about yourself or about your situation that maybe is helping you along your journey?
I like to tell people that I used to travel out of necessity when I was young, but now I travel by choice, and it is my favorite thing to do. And so when I was young, my sister and I were only 15 months apart. And so we kind of felt like twins a little bit growing up. But every single summer, my mom would take us back to Antigua, and she would, it's literally like school would end and the day after school, we're on a plane to Antigua. And then we come back the day before school starts or like the week before school starts. And so we got to really spend all of our summers with our family, which was something that, of course, I didn't value then. If I could go back, are you telling me a whole summer in a tropical island with 365 beaches? Like, please, like I'll do anything. But the older we got, the more connected we got to sports or clubs or different things that would take our time over the summer here in America. And so we found ourselves going to Antigua less and less. And so kind of like I was saying, like I would do anything now to get to spend the entire summer, like 2 whole months there. And so when my parents came here, it was just the 2 of them and then the 2 of us, my sister and I. And so all of our family is overseas. So it's just the 4 of us here in America. And that's okay, right? That's our little family unit and we're tight as can be. But it's interesting to know that we would have to wait for the summers to get to see our family. And then I just think we're so silly of course, like those things felt really pressing and really important to us as we were growing up, like getting connected to sports teams and being with our friends all summer, because that's when the fun things happened because we weren't in school. But getting to be with your family is something that is super important too. And so now that I'm an adult and have to pay real people dollars for things, it's definitely something that I just wish that I had at my disposal again. Thankfully, my dad, he actually works for American Airlines. So yes, there are benefits that come with that, which are super amazing. But my birthday was actually yesterday. And thank you. I turned 24, and that's when your benefits go away. So honestly, I did have really great
yeah.
But being a real adult now, I guess that's when American says you can pay for your travel. And so now I'm really going to have to be strategic when I want to travel or when I want to kind of step outside of myself. Because like I said before, it is something that I love to do. I like to, of course, go back to my own roots and experience my own culture and get to see my family. But at the same time, too, like I said, I studied abroad in London, and getting to see their culture and getting to see kind of all of the differences or all of the similarities that the United States has with the UK. And then going to Paris, right? Even though it was for like literally a couple of days, getting to see their culture for a little bit and all of these beautiful like monuments that you just kind of like hear or see on social media or whatever. Like I'm standing in front of like the Eiffel Tower or the Arc de Triomphe or whatever the case is, right? So all of those things to me are breathtaking, and I really will spend the rest of my life trying to discover other cultures and even increasing my cultural competency, right? Like I'm always talking with my students about like ways that you can do that. Studying abroad's not the only way to increase that, but at the same time, like if you have the opportunity and finances are lining up or things are kind of working in your way, like take it, right? Don't be scared that you're going to be disconnected from maybe your family for a short while. All of those things will be okay, and you'll get to see so much and you'll get to experience so much and learn so much about who you are. But I think that one of the things that I really do value about myself is that I can stand on my own 2 feet, right? And if I am in a pickle, like I can work myself out of it, or I can try to think critically to be able to I'd just be okay at the end of the day, right? And of course, having that safety net of my mom and of my dad, knowing that I'll be okay at the end of the day, like that, it probably helped me in my exploration, knowing that like I'll never actually be on my own. But at the same time, like when you're 3 hours away or 2.5 hours away, like if you need something, you got to figure it out because no one's coming to you for 3 hours. So I think that that is something that I've learned, and travel's taught me that, yes, but at the same time too, just even like going a little bit away for school definitely taught me that too.
What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm so excited, like I said before, to start this professional journey. I'm excited that as we're kind of going through life now, the world is starting to open back up a little bit. Things are starting to feel a little bit more normal. Getting human interaction is something that isn't now few and far between, right? Like if you want human interaction, it's usually there for you. And so getting connected with my friends, we had a housewarming party the other night, and just like having people in my vicinity was just so great, right? And so getting to see people again, like being back in the area, I'm close to a lot of my line sisters from my sorority. I'm close to a lot of my friends from undergrad. And so I'm excited now to just kind of like be an adult in my 20s, just living life here. And then, of course, getting to work with students. And I like to say that I am like the mushy gushy side of student affairs, right? So I like to support students through the challenges that they're having, or be able to connect them with resources that they need or might not know that they need, right? And so getting to learn who I am as a professional, right? Because I've always been a student. Like I've always been doing like professional work, but like in the context of also being a student too. And so I'm excited to not have that separation, at least for a while, because I do plan to go and get my PhD. And thankfully, the company that I'm working for has tuition remission for the programs that they work with. And they have a couple of EDD programs there. So yes, get my terminal degree. It might not be a PhD, but it'll be a terminal degree. And so I'm excited for all of that, right? Continued growth, knowledge, education, all of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for so much. Sorry if that's not like tangible enough.
At least thinking about it. I did have one other question though. Reflecting back on high school and now, what's changed about yourself?
Yeah, I think my confidence has developed a lot. I think before, I was always so eager to leave a good impression on the people that I met or the people that I was interacting with. But knowing too, like, Simone, be proud of yourself and how far you've come. And whether or not you've left a good impression, at the end of the day, you know that you're staying true to who you are and just kind of living your life as you see it through your own lens and with all of my perspectives that I'm seeing. So I'm okay with who I am at the end of the day. And I'm actually very proud of that person. And so not that I didn't feel that in high school, but I think that that has grown tremendously. And that is probably what I'm proudest of most.
That's excellent. That's great reflection. I really appreciate that. I am glad we got to catch up. Happy birthday. And congratulations again on your journey and your new profession.
Thanks, Andy. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and catch up with me. This was really exciting, and I was grateful for the opportunity.
Well, that about does it here, folks. Thank you for watching Hometown Heroes here on Pack 14. If you'd like to nominate someone to be featured on Hometown Heroes, please contact George Whitehead at giwhitehead@salisbury.edu or call 410-749-1480.
You too can be a hometown hero on Pack 14.